Excuse me, you can't sit here. The flight attendant's voice sliced through the calm chatter of boarding passengers. Those seats are for premium passengers only. Amara Lewis looked up slowly from fastening her seatbelt. I'm aware, she said evenly. That's why we bought them. The attendant, her name tag reading Cynthia, gave a tight smile. I think you're mistaken. First class is, well, it's reserved for those who... She hesitated, eyes flicking over Amara's natural curls and simple blouse, purchased the appropriate tickets. Her husband Derek glanced at her, his jaw tightening. We did purchase them, row 2A and 2B. That's us. Cynthia frowned, reaching out her hand. Then let me see your boarding passes. Derek handed them over. She scanned them, her expression hardening. These look printed, not scanned. Did you? He cut her off. Ma'am, they were scanned at the gate. Ask the agent. But Cynthia wasn't listening. She turned slightly, signaling to another attendant nearby. I might need a supervisor here. We've got a possible seating issue. Passengers started murmuring. A man in 3A leaned forward, whispering, What's going on? Another woman pulled out her phone, pretending to scroll while recording. Amara inhaled slowly through her nose. We're not causing a problem, she said calmly. We just want to take our flight in peace. Cynthia folded her arms. Then you can take it in economy. You're disrupting the premium cabin. Derek's patience cracked just a little. Disrupting? We've been sitting here quietly. The only disruption right now, he gestured subtly toward her, is you. That made her bristle. Excuse me? Look, he said, voice low but steady. I don't know what you think this is, but we paid for these seats. Check your system. Cynthia's radio crackled. She pressed the earpiece, whispering something. Then, with a smirk that barely hid her nerves, she announced, Security will verify this shortly. Until then, please stand. Amara exchanged a glance with Derek. Around them, whispers thickened like smoke. Someone muttered, Just follow the rules. Another voice said, They're holding up the flight. Amara's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her water bottle. We're not standing, she said quietly. We've done nothing wrong. A minute later, an airport security officer appeared in the aisle. His voice was firm but professional. Sir, ma'am, I've been told there's a ticket issue. Can I see your IDs? Derek handed his over without hesitation. Sure. And while you're at it, ask your flight attendant why she's calling the police on paying customers. The officer studied their IDs, then the tickets. Everything looks valid here. I'll double-check with the gate, Cynthia interjected quickly. They might have scanned duplicates. We had that happen once before. People try to sneak into first class all the time. Amara finally turned to face her fully, her eyes calm but sharp. You didn't even ask our names before you decided we didn't belong here. Cynthia blinked. That's not true. It's exactly what happened, Derek said. You saw 2 black passengers in first class and assumed we were in the wrong place. I don't see color, Cynthia said defensively. Right, Amara murmured. You just see assumptions. Before Cynthia could answer, the officer's radio chirped. He listened, nodded, and turned back to her. Gate confirms the tickets are legitimate. Their names match the manifest. You can proceed. Cynthia's cheeks flushed crimson. That can't be... Maybe there was an update. Amara's voice was quiet but cutting. There wasn't. Passengers started shifting uncomfortably. The woman recording lowered her phone, whispering, Oh my God. Derek leaned back in his seat, exhaling through his nose. So, are we cleared to fly now? Cynthia forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, just... misunderstanding. But she didn't move on. She lingered, frozen between embarrassment and disbelief. The air around her felt heavier by the second. Amara looked at her squarely. You're dismissed, Miss Harlow. The attendant stiffened. Excuse me? Before Amara could respond, the captain emerged from the cockpit, drawn by the commotion. Is there a problem here? Cynthia turned to him quickly. Just a mix-up with passenger seating. It's handled. The captain's eyes landed on Amara and Derek. Everything all right? Derek gave a polite nod. We're fine, Captain, but it might be worth reviewing how your staff handles mix-ups. Something about his tone made the captain pause, an authority that didn't match his soft voice. He nodded curtly and returned to the cockpit. As Cynthia turned to leave, Amara said gently, "You might want to be careful how you treat passengers, especially before knowing who they are." Cynthia gave a forced laugh. "Is that a threat?" Amara reached into her bag and calmly pulled out a slim black wallet. She flipped it open just enough for Cynthia to see the gleaming Federal Aviation Administration badge inside. "It's a reminder," Amara said evenly. Cynthia's jaw dropped. The officer beside her blinked. "FAA?" Derek pulled out his matching ID. "Federal Aviation Safety Inspectors," he confirmed. "We were scheduled to assess onboard professionalism during this flight." Gasps rippled down the cabin. One passenger whispered, "You're kidding!" Another muttered, "Oh, she's done for." Cynthia's color drained from her face. "You're inspectors?" Amara tilted her head. "You didn't check our names on the manifest, remember?" The woman's lips parted, but no words came. The officer stepped aside, looking mortified. "My apologies, ma'am, sir. We had no idea." "That's the point," Derek said quietly. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the hum of the plane felt too loud. Cynthia slowly backed away, face burning red, retreating toward the galley. Amara leaned back, her heartbeat finally steadying. She caught Derek's eye and exhaled. "You handled that better than I would have." He gave a small smirk. "Years of practice?" Passengers avoided eye contact, embarrassed. A few whispered apologies under their breath. The captain's voice came over the intercom moments later. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be departing shortly. Thank you for your patience." But as the plane began to taxi, Amara's phone buzzed. A message from an FAA colleague. "Heard you're on Flight 762. Something's about to go viral. You okay?" She looked toward the front of the cabin where Cynthia was whispering to another attendant, her face pale. Derek frowned. "What's wrong?" Amara showed him the message. "Someone must have uploaded the recording already." He sighed, shaking his head. "Guess it's too late to stay anonymous now." Amara looked out the window, the sun streaking across the clouds. "Let's see what happens when the world finds out who really flies by the rules." The engines roared to life. Outside, the runway stretched into endless blue. Inside, silence sat heavy, a mix of guilt, awe, and something much deeper. Because while the plane was about to take off, the real turbulence was only beginning. So what do you think happens when the truth finally lands? Would you have stayed calm if you were in their seats? Comment your thoughts below. Now, let's get back to the story. The plane had just touched down in Atlanta when the first whispers began to spread beyond the cabin. Passengers were already scrolling through their phones, gasping as a video uploaded just 30 minutes earlier began racking up views at lightning speed. It showed everything: the accusation, the humiliation, and the moment Amara calmly revealed her FAA badge to a stunned flight attendant. By the time the aircraft reached the gate, that clip had already been shared on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. One caption read, "Black couple humiliated in first class. Turns out they were Federal Aviation Inspectors." The internet was eating it up, but inside the plane, silence reigned. Cynthia, the flight attendant, stood near the galley door, trembling slightly. Her once confident smile was gone, replaced by the pale stiffness of someone who'd just realized her mistake might cost her everything. As passengers gathered their bags, Amara and Derek stayed seated, letting the crowd pass. When the aisle finally cleared, the captain appeared again, his expression somber. "Mr. and Mrs. Lewis," he began quietly, "on behalf of the airline, I want to personally apologize for what happened. It shouldn't have." Amara met his eyes, calm as ever. "You're right," she said. "It shouldn't have, but it keeps happening." He nodded slowly, glancing toward Cynthia. "We'll be filing a report immediately. I imagine the FAA will as well." Derek stood, straightening his jacket. "We'll file our report the same way we always do, professionally and accurately." He paused before adding, "But I think your company might need to ask itself why a uniform seems to decide who deserves respect." The captain's face flushed with shame. "Understood." As they exited the plane, the other passengers began to clap softly, a hesitant, awkward sound, but genuine. Some offered quiet apologies. One woman whispered, "You handled that with more grace than anyone could have." Amara simply nodded, replying, "Grace is easy when you know who you are." By that afternoon, the video had surpassed 2 million views. Major news outlets picked it up. Headlines read, "Airline under investigation after FAA inspectors harassed on flight. Humiliation at 30,000 feet. Couple accused of stealing first class." The airline scrambled to contain the fallout. Statements were released, apologies drafted, and internal memos leaked. Cynthia's name wasn't public, but inside the company, everyone knew. That night, Amara sat at her kitchen table, laptop open to her FAA report. Derek was beside her, typing up his section. "You think they'll fire her?" he asked quietly. Amara didn't look up. "I think they'll try to save face first." He nodded, then glanced at her. "You okay?" She exhaled slowly. "I'm fine. Just tired. Every time something like this happens, I wonder how many others didn't have a badge to prove themselves." Derek leaned back, watching her with quiet admiration. "You didn't just prove yourself today, you proved them wrong." She gave a small smile. "Maybe. But I'd rather they learn than lose their jobs." The next morning, Amara's phone rang. It was the airline CEO requesting a private meeting. When they arrived at the downtown office, they were met with polished smiles and tense body language. Reporters waited outside. Inside the conference room, the CEO shook their hands stiffly. "Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, let me start by saying how deeply sorry we are," he began. "This entire incident goes against everything we stand for." Derek folded his arms. "You might want to recheck what you stand for then, because we both know this isn't the first time your staff has acted this way." The CEO swallowed. "You're right, which is why we're launching mandatory diversity and ethics training. And Ms. Harlow, the attendant involved, has been placed on immediate suspension pending investigation." Amara looked up. "I don't want a scapegoat," she said. "I want systemic change. Every day, people who don't look like your usual customers face moments like this. Maybe not with cameras, but with the same sting." The CEO hesitated. "We'll make it right." Amara gave him a calm, piercing look. "Do that, not because it's good PR, do it because it's human." That evening, a news anchor replayed the now viral footage with commentary. While many are praising the couple's restraint, others are calling this a wake-up call for corporate accountability. Sources say the FAA has launched a joint investigation into the airline's internal policies. Meanwhile, Cynthia sat alone in her apartment, her phone buzzing nonstop. She scrolled through hateful comments, headlines, and messages from co-workers. Her eyes were red, her coffee untouched. For the first time, she realized what arrogance had cost her. The next day, a handwritten note arrived at Amara's doorstep. It read, "I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Not really. I saw what I wanted to see, and that's my failure, not yours. Cynthia Harlow." Amara read it twice, then set it down. She didn't feel satisfaction, just a heavy kind of peace. Derek asked, "You gonna respond?" She shook her head. "Some lessons don't need answers, they need silence." Weeks later, Amara was invited to speak at an aviation ethics seminar. She stood before a room full of airline executives, flight crew, and FAA trainees. The same clip of her confrontation played on the screen behind her, paused at the moment she held up her badge. She spoke softly, but her words carried weight. "I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you extend until someone shows they don't deserve it. But prejudice, even when it hides behind politeness, is still poison. It costs companies money, but it costs people dignity." The room was silent. Even the air seemed still. She continued, "That flight wasn't about first class or economy. It was about assumptions. Every single person deserves to be treated like they belong, whether they wear a suit, a hoodie, or a uniform." When she stepped off the stage, people stood and clapped, not out of pity, out of recognition. Derek met her at the side door, smiling faintly. You think it'll change anything? She smiled back. Maybe not overnight, but every ripple starts somewhere. 2 weeks later, the airline announced a new initiative, Project Flight Equal, a policy ensuring unbiased passenger service training across all divisions. It was built off the FAA's recommendations and Amara's speech. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman once accused of stealing first class had now reshaped the very system that judged her. That evening, as she and Derek sat on their porch watching planes trace silver lines through the sunset, he said, You know, you could have yelled. You could have sued. You could have destroyed them. Amara smiled softly. Sometimes you don't need to destroy something to win. You just have to make sure it never happens again. The wind carried her words into the quiet. Somewhere above, a plane flew low, steady, unbothered, free. Moral lesson: dignity doesn't shout. True strength is staying calm when the world tries to make you small. Never assume someone's worth by how they look, because humility can save you, and arrogance can end you. Quick question for you. If you were in Amara's place, would you have stayed calm or spoken up differently? Comment your answer below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories where truth, grace, and justice take flight.